The August sun beat down on the dusty border town of Nogales, like a hammer on an anvil, turning the asphalt soft and sending heat waves rippling across the cracked parking lot of Ramirez Auto Repair. The air smelled of motor oil, dried mesquite, and the kind of desperation that clings to border towns like a second skin. Cicadas screamed their endless song from the scraggly trees, and somewhere in the distance, a dog barked at nothing and everything. Miguel Angel Ramirez wiped the sweat from his forehead with a grease-stained rag, leaving a dark streak across his weathered skin. 43 years old, with calloused hands that had turned wrenches since he was 12 years old in Guadalajara, he had crossed the border legally 15 years ago with nothing but a toolbox and a dream. Now he owned this small shop, 3,000 square feet of corrugated metal and concrete, where he fixed cars for people who could barely afford the parts. His rates were the lowest in town because he remembered what it felt like to count every peso. His wife Maria ran a small taqueria next door, and together they were raising 3 kids in a country that sometimes felt like it did not want them there. Before we go any further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and standing up for what is right, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel, and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. Because stories like this remind us that humanity still exists in every corner of the world, even in the places we least expect to find it. It was late afternoon when Miguel heard it, a deep, stuttering rumble that coughed and sputtered down the main road like a dying animal. He looked up from the Honda Civic he was working on and saw a sight that made his stomach clench. A massive Harley-Davidson was limping into his parking lot, black smoke trailing from its exhaust, the engine making sounds that no motorcycle should ever make. And the man riding it was the kind of figure that made most people cross to the other side of the street. He was enormous, at least 6'4", maybe 260 pounds of muscle and tattoo, with arms like pythons and a beard that hung halfway down his chest. His leather vest was covered in patches that Miguel recognized immediately. Red and white, Death Head Skull, Hell's Angels. The words Sergeant at Arms were stitched beneath a patch that read Tucson Chapter. The biker killed the engine, which died with a grateful wheeze, and sat there for a moment, staring at the smoking machine between his legs. When he looked up, his eyes were the color of storm clouds, and there was frustration carved into every line of his face. Miguel could have stayed inside. He could have pretended to be busy. He could have pointed down the road to the Harley dealership 40 miles away and let this terrifying stranger become someone else's problem. But that was not who Miguel Angel Ramirez was. He walked out into the brutal sun, wiping his hands on his rag, and stopped a few feet from the massive biker. His heart was pounding, but his voice was steady. "That does not sound good, amigo," Miguel said. "You want me to take a look?" The biker studied him for a long moment, his eyes traveling from Miguel's worn work boots to his faded Ramirez Auto Repair shirt. Something flickered in those storm-gray eyes. Surprise, maybe, or suspicion. "You know Harleys?" the biker asked, his voice like gravel wrapped in velvet. Miguel shrugged. "I know engines. Harley, Honda, tractor, does not matter. They all speak the same language if you listen." The biker's name was Jack Reese, road name Bear. He had been riding for 31 years, a Hell's Angel for 23 of them. He was on his way to a memorial run in Phoenix for a fallen brother, and his bike had started dying somewhere around the border. For the next 4 hours, Miguel worked on that Harley like it was his own child. He diagnosed a cracked cylinder head, a failing fuel pump, and electrical gremlins that had nested in the wiring harness. Parts alone would cost over $2,000. Labor at any dealership would add another $1,000 on top of that. Bear watched him work in silence, occasionally handing him tools without being asked, the way men do when they understand machines. When the sun started to set, painting the desert sky in shades of orange and purple, Miguel finally straightened up and stretched his aching back. "I can fix her," Miguel said, "but I need to order parts, 3 days, maybe 4. You got somewhere to stay?" Bear shook his head slowly. "I was planning to make Phoenix by tonight." Miguel did not hesitate. "My wife makes the best carne asada in Arizona. You stay with us until the bike is ready. We have a spare room." Bear stared at him like he had grown a second head. "You are inviting me, a Hell's Angel you just met, into your home, with your family." Miguel met his gaze without flinching. I am inviting a man who needs help into my home. The vest does not change what I see. 3 days turned into 4. 4 turned into 5. During that time, Bear ate dinner with Miguel's family every night, played soccer in the backyard with his 3 kids, and taught Miguel's oldest son how to change a spark plug. He helped Maria carry groceries and fixed a leak under their kitchen sink that had been bothering Miguel for months. When the Harley was finally purring like a kitten, Bear reached for his wallet. Miguel shook his head. No charge, amigo. Bear's jaw tightened. That is over $3,000 in parts and labor. I cannot let you do that. Miguel put his hand on the bigger man's shoulder. You can, and you will. 5 days ago, you were a stranger. Now you are family. Family does not pay. Bear stood there for a long moment, his massive frame trembling with something that might have been emotion. Then he pulled Miguel into a bear hug that nearly cracked his ribs. You are a rare one, Miguel Ramirez, Bear rasped. Our family does not forget kindness like this. Remember that. 1 week later, Miguel was closing up shop when he heard it. Thunder. But the sky was clear and blue. The sound grew louder, deeper, until the walls of his little shop began to vibrate. Miguel stepped outside and his breath caught in his throat. Motorcycles were pouring down the main road like a chrome river. Big Harleys, engines roaring in perfect synchronization. 10, 20, 50. They kept coming, filling the street, spilling into his parking lot, surrounding his shop in a circle of leather and steel. 170 Hell's Angels had come to Nogales. Miguel's legs went weak. He reached for the doorframe to steady himself. In the parking lot of the taqueria, Maria had come out with the children, her face white with fear. Then the engines cut. All at once, the silence was almost worse than the thunder. From the center of the formation, a familiar figure emerged. Bear dismounted his restored Harley and walked toward Miguel, and behind him, 169 brothers followed. Miguel Angel Ramirez. Bear's voice echoed across the suddenly silent street. 1 week ago, you helped a stranger when you had every reason to be afraid. You opened your home. You fed my family. You fixed my bike and refused to take a single dollar. He paused and something glistened in his storm-gray eyes. Our family does not forget that. A woman stepped forward from the formation, her gray hair pulled back in a braid, her own leather vest marking her as an old lady of the club. She carried shopping bags in both arms. Behind her, more riders came forward with boxes, bags, and bundles. Bear reached into his vest and pulled out an envelope, thick and heavy. He pressed it into Miguel's trembling hands. This is from every chapter in Arizona and New Mexico, Bear said. $23,000. For the parts you never charged me for the meals your wife cooked, for the kindness you showed a stranger. Miguel shook his head, tears streaming down his face. I cannot accept this. It is too much. I only did what anyone should do. Bear gripped his shoulder. That is exactly why you can accept it, because no one else does what anyone should do, except you. The Hells Angels stayed for 3 hours. They restocked Miguel's shop with tools and equipment worth more than everything he owned. They filled Maria's taqueria with enough supplies to last 6 months. They played with the children and told stories of the road, and before they left, Bear presented Miguel with something that made the proud mechanic finally break down completely. A leather vest, not a full patch, but something just as meaningful. Across the back it read, Friend of the Club, and below that, in smaller letters, Miguel Ramirez, brother without a bike. You ever need anything, Bear said, his voice rough with emotion, day or night. You call this number. 170 brothers will be here in 6 hours. He looked at Maria and the children. Your family is our family now. Forever. The engines roared back to life. 170 Hell's Angels rode out of Nogales in perfect formation, leaving behind a cloud of dust and a Mexican immigrant who had just learned that kindness, real kindness, the kind that costs you something, always finds its way home. What would you do if a stranger needed help? Would you look away? Would you make excuses? Or would you remember that every person you meet is someone's brother, someone's father, someone's friend? If this story touched you, do not forget to like, share, and subscribe, because we need more stories that remind us what humanity looks like. And comment below with the words "Kindness has no borders." to show that you understand what Miguel taught 170 Hell's Angels. Because sometimes the smallest act of generosity, offered when it costs us the most, can change everything. For the person we help, for ourselves, and for a world that desperately needs to remember that family is not about blood or borders or patches on a vest. Family is about the choices we make when no one is watching. And Miguel Angel Ramirez chose kindness.